Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents The Whirlwind of War, Voices of the Storm, 1861 through 1865, by Stephen B. Oates. Narrated by David Colacci, Susan Ericksen, and James Fouhey. Events by themselves are unimportant. It is the perception of events that is crucial. John Ferling. I think that no one individual can look at truth. It blinds you. You look at it and you see one phase of it. Someone else looks at it and sees a slightly awry phase of it. But taken altogether, the truth is in what they saw, though nobody saw the truth intact. William Faulkner. Preface. This is the story of the American Civil War. It is a sequel to The Approaching Fury, which covers the 40 tumultuous years that led to America's Armageddon. Like that book, The Whirlwind of War is told from the viewpoints of several principal players in the drama: the rival presidents, Abraham Lincoln and Jefferson Davis, the rival generals, Robert E. Lee, Ulysses S. Grant, and William Tecumseh Sherman, the great black abolitionist, editor, and orator, Frederick Douglass, the young Union battlefield nurse, Cornelia Hancock, the brilliant head of the Chicago Sanitary Commission and co-creator of the Northern Sanitary Fair, Mary Livermore, the Confederate socialite and political insider, Mary Boykin Chesnut, the assassin, John Wilkes Booth, and the greatest poet of the era, Walt Whitman, who speaks in the coda about the meaning of the war and Lincoln's death. The fiction of William Faulkner inspired me to tell the story of the Civil War from multiple points of view. This technique illustrates the profound truth that the people of the past responded to events and to one another according to their perception of reality, and that their responses shaped the course of succeeding events. Like all people, Civil War Americans acted according to what they thought was true. Their perception of events, therefore, played a crucial role in how they shaped and fought the war, and what they did to win or lose it. This book employs the same technique I used in The Approaching Fury. It is told in the first-person voices of the principal players, in the form of interconnecting dramatic monologues. This technique gives the story a passion and a sense of immediacy and freshness it could not possibly possess had it been told in the third-person voice. It fascinates me that the protagonist in one monologue becomes the antagonist in another. Each speaker takes his or her turn on stage, serving as narrator for critical events in which he or she was the major instigator and participant or eyewitness. In adopting this technique, I was strongly influenced by Robert Altman's films Nashville and Short Cuts, and John Sales's film City of Hope, which employ multiple viewpoints and segue ingeniously from one character to another. My narrative likewise segues back and forth from one historical figure to another, showing how their lives intersected, how they perceived and argued with one another, influenced one another's actions, and shaped the events and direction of the Civil War. I also drew inspiration from Hal Holbrook's one-man portrayal of Mark Twain, Mark Twain Tonight, and Julie Harris's staged impersonation of Emily Dickinson, The Belle of Amherst, both of which showed me the power and possibilities of the dramatic monologue. The Whirlwind of War is my impersonation of 11 central figures of the Civil War. The metaphor in the title comes from them. One after another, they describe the war in terms of a violent storm, a whirlwind, or a tornado. By necessity, my cast is dominated by white men, for they controlled the Union and the Confederacy and were mainly responsible for how the war turned out. To write the monologues, I steeped myself in the words of my speakers, their letters, speeches, interviews, reminiscences, and other recorded utterances, and then simulated how, if they were reminiscing aloud, they would describe historical events in which they were the principal players or eyewitnesses. In each case I found that I had to get into character, much as an actor gets into a role. As much as possible I used the actual words of my characters, their phrases, even whole sentences. When that was not possible, I simulated their language and rhythms of speech in order to recount developments in which they participated. As my references indicate, the events and themes in the monologues adhere to the actual historical record. There are many dramatic scenes in my story. These are a matter of the record and are fully documented in my notes. There is also a fair amount of dialogue. Much of it comes from authentic sources, letters, memoirs, personal histories, though I took the liberty to rewrite such dialogue that seemed too formal for the spoken word. On other occasions I created dialogue from factual descriptions in letters, reports, testimony, and similar sources. An example is the scene in 1861, where Senators Charles Sumner, Benjamin Franklin Wade, and Zachariah Chandler importune Lincoln to issue an Emancipation Proclamation. Their arguments are fully recorded in the third person and past tense in various sources. I simply cast the information in dialogue form, in the first person and the present tense. In short, in this and similar instances I simulated how my figures spoke by using facts imaginatively. The technique is not new with me. Allen Nevins, one of the greatest American historians of all time, wove historical data into graphic scenes and simulated dialogue in his widely acclaimed work of nonfiction, The Emergence of Lincoln. Like Nevins, I believe that a little fact-based creativity of this sort enhances our appreciation and understanding of the people of history. A word about my telling of Booth and the assassination of Lincoln. The modern, authoritative treatments of the story by William A. Tidwell, James O. Hall, David Winfred Gaddy, William Hanchett, and Betty J. Owensby convince me that Booth had ties to the Confederate Secret Service, that his abduction and assassination plots were part of several schemes of retribution to be executed by rebel agents, and that Booth had the approval and support of the highest authorities in Richmond, possibly Jefferson Davis himself. In their view, the North's ruthless military policies, especially against civilians, justified covert retaliation against Lincoln and his colleagues in Washington. My reference notes, I believe, provide convincing documentation for the revisionist version of the story. For a discussion of that version, see Barbara Hewitt, William Hanchett on Lincoln's Assassination After 130 Years, The Civil War Roundtable, Chicago, Illinois, April 1995, 1. My portrait of Sherman also requires an explanation. The red-headed warrior was a profane man. Those who knew him spoke of his profanity in their letters, reminiscences, and histories of the war. However, they seldom quoted him beyond a damn or a hell. The truth is, Sherman was a good deal more profane than that. In recreating his voice, I honored his character and let him curse with fervor. I don't think this technique violates the truth of history. On the contrary, it gets closer to what the historical Sherman was like than does a rigid adherence to his recorded utterances, his letters and memoirs, for instance, which were highly sanitized. Lincoln also swore on occasion, and some of his jokes would have made the prudish squirm. You will find one such joke early on in my story. Humor, of course, was Lincoln's antidote for depression, which plagued him all his life. In his day, the popular term for melancholia was hypochondria, or the hypo. The latter was Lincoln's favorite word for it. In his monologues, he uses it frequently to describe how inept generals, military reversals, and other bad news affected him. There are many legitimate ways to write history. Indeed, the great strength of the field is its Renaissance breadth and diversity. By composing this book in the first
Sample complete. Ready to continue?